I found my wife cheating with her business partner, draining our $500, $0 savings to fund their secret condominium affair. And now she's suing me for half the property I built from scratch after discovering she forged my signature on the legal documents. I never thought I'd be the kind of guy to get like this, but here I am, sitting in my living room, trying to piece together how everything fell apart so damn fast. The most unexpected moment. When I found out my wife, Lisa, was cheating on me with her business partner, Mark. It wasn't just a quick fling either. They'd been sneaking around for months, draining our savings and planning some kind of secret life together. And just when I thought I'd seen it all, she's now suing me for half the property I built from scratch, forging my signature on legal docs to make it seem like I was with her betrayal. Lisa and I had been together for over 10 years. We met in college, shared dreams, built a life, and I thought we had a solid foundation. We were the kind of couple that friends admired, at least that's what I believed. We had a nice house, a couple of cars, and a savings of about $500,000. I worked my ass off to get everything we had, starting from nothing. I was proud of that, proud that I built this life with my own hands. Looking back now, I realize I missed some signs. She started being more distant, secretive about her phone, and she'd come home late more often. At first, I brushed it off, maybe a new client or just stress at work. But then I started noticing little things. Her phone constantly with her, password protected, deleting messages. She'd leave her laptop open sometimes, but when I'd glance at the screen, she'd quickly close it or change tabs. I thought she was just being cautious, not suspicious. The real shocker hit when I found her phone one night. I was cleaning up in the living room and her phone buzzed with a message from Mark. "Can't wait to see you tonight, it's going to be amazing." I froze. My stomach clenched hard. I didn't want to believe it at first, so I kept scrolling through her messages, and sure enough, there was a string of texts that made it crystal clear they'd been more than just business partners. The way they talked about meeting after hours, planning little getaways, and even discussing their secret condo was sickening. That condo, she'd been telling me she was working late on some new project, maybe a new client. But I'd seen the receipts for the payments she'd made, and the address kept popping up. Turns out she'd been funneling money from our savings, $500,000, to fund her affair with Mark at their secret condo. I couldn't believe it. All those years of trust, and she was just draining us dry to keep her secret life going. I felt like I'd been sucker punched. My mind was racing, trying to process how someone I loved could do this to me. I'd always been the one working late, sacrificing for our future while she was out there, apparently, having sex with her business partner. The betrayal cut deep. I wanted to confront her immediately, but I needed to think first. I sat there trembling, trying to hold it together, knowing I'd have to face her soon. The next morning, I decided I couldn't keep this bottled up. I waited until she got home from her business trip and I confronted her. She tried to deny everything at first, said I was paranoid, that Mark was just a friend, that I was imagining things. She spun some bullshit about how she was stressed and I was overreacting. But I had all the evidence. The messages, the bank transfers, the receipts. I laid it all out and her face twisted into this bitchy sneer. She told me I was crazy, that I had no right to accuse her of anything, and that I was just jealous because I wasn't satisfying her anymore. That moment changed everything. I felt a mix of rage, sadness, and betrayal I can't even put into words. How could she lie so effortlessly? How could she pretend to be the loving wife I thought I knew? I'd given her everything, my time, my money, my trust, and she'd been screwing around behind my back. The worst part. She kept insisting she was the victim, that I was overreacting, that Mark was just a business associate, even though I had proof otherwise. It was like talking to a wall. The emotional fallout hit me hard. I remember sitting there staring at her, feeling like I'd been hit by a truck. I was angry, yes, but also deeply hurt. I'd always thought we had a future, that I was building something real. Instead, I found out she'd been planning her escape, draining our life savings to fund her affair, and then lying to my face. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, and I started questioning everything. My judgment, my worth, my entire life with her. The trust was shattered. I felt like I was drowning in this wave of betrayal, and I didn't know how to get out of it. But I knew I had to decide what to do next. I couldn't keep living in this nightmare of lies. I thought about divorce, about fighting her legally over the property she was trying to claim half of, property I built from nothing. I was furious when I discovered she forged my signature on legal documents to make it seem like I agreed to transfers of our assets. That was the final straw. She was willing to lie, cheat, and steal to get what she wanted. I realized I had to fight back, not just for my money but for my dignity. So I started planning my next move. I hired a lawyer, got all the evidence I needed, and prepared to take her to court. I knew she'd try to spin it all against me, make me look like the villain, but I was determined to prove her lies. I also wanted to expose her affair publicly, to make sure everyone knew what kind of person she really was. I wasn't going to let her get away with this without consequences. This whole ordeal has changed me. I never thought I'd be the guy to go through something like this, but here I am. It's a brutal lesson in trust and betrayal, and honestly, I don't think I'll ever fully recover from it. But I do know one thing. I'm not going to let her ruin me. I'll fight for what's mine and I'll rebuild from this chaos. If you're ever in a similar situation, trust your instincts, gather your evidence, and don't let anyone gaslight you into thinking you're crazy. Because at the end of the day, betrayal is a wound that takes a long time to heal, and sometimes you just have to take control and do what's right, even if it means tearing everything down first. After I confronted Lisa that morning, everything shifted into this chaos I wasn't prepared for. She started crying, acting like she was the victim, saying I was overreacting, that it was just a stupid mistake, and that Mark was just a business partner she was trying to help. She kept insisting that I was paranoid and that I needed to trust her. That was laughable, considering I had the proof right in front of me. Her tears didn't move me. If anything, they made me feel sick. How could she lie so effortlessly? How could she pretend to care when she'd been screwing around behind my back? I was furious, but I also felt this deep, aching sadness. I trusted her for so long, believed we had a future, and now it all seemed like a cruel joke. I told her to pack her things and leave. I needed space to breathe, to think. I didn't want her in my house anymore, not while she was still lying and denying everything. She threw a fit, saying I was overreacting, that she loved me, that she'd never do anything to hurt me, that she was just stressed out, and Mark was just a business associate, even though I had the receipts. That was her go-to lie. It's just business, as if that somehow justified everything. I told her I didn't want to hear her bullshit, and I called a lawyer right there on the spot. The lawyer told me to gather all evidence I had: texts, bank transfers, any correspondence, and to prepare for a long fight. I knew Lisa would try to spin this in her favor, probably claim I was abusive or controlling, typical manipulation tactics. But I had the proof, and I was ready to fight. I also told my lawyer about the forged signatures on our property documents. I discovered she had forged my name on legal papers that transferred ownership of our house and some other assets into her name, or at least tried to. That was criminal, and I knew I had to press charges if I wanted to stop her. In the days that followed, I started digging into her financials more deeply. It turns out she'd been funneling money from our savings, about $500, $0, into accounts that I didn't even know existed. She was draining our life savings to fund her affair with Mark, who was apparently just as deep in this mess as she was. I found receipts for payments to the condo, pictures of her and Mark in what I now know was that secret place, and messages where they planned their future together. It was all there, laid out in black and white. The betrayal felt like a punch to the gut every time I looked at it. I also learned she'd been lying about her business trips. They weren't business at all. They were trips to see Mark, to be with him at their condo. She'd been juggling two lives, and I was the fool who thought I was building a future with her. I felt anger rising up, hot, uncontrollable. How could she do this to me? How could she drain our savings, lie to my face, and then turn around and pretend she loved me? It was like she was some master manipulator, and I was just a pawn in her game. One night, I decided to look through her phone again, just to be sure I hadn't missed anything. That's when I saw a new message from her. "Mark, I can't wait to see you tonight. This is our last chance to be together. Don't let me down." The words hit me like a freight train. She was planning another visit to their condo, probably to have sex with him again. I couldn't believe she was so blatant about it. She'd been lying to my face all this time, and now she was openly talking about their secret rendezvous. That's when I decided I'd had enough. I was going to fight for everything I deserved: our house, our savings, my reputation. I hired a lawyer who specialized in property disputes and fraud. We started preparing the paperwork to sue her for the return of the property she forged my signature on and to freeze her accounts. I wasn't planning to go down without a fight. I wanted her to pay for what she'd done, for the pain she caused me, and for trying to steal what I built. But the most shocking part, she doubled down on her lies. She claimed I was the one cheating, that I was having an affair with some woman I'd never even met. She tried to turn it around, saying I was the one betraying her. That was her typical tactic, project. Her sins onto me make me look like the bad guy. I just sat there, stunned, realizing how deep her deception went. She was willing to lie and manipulate to save her own ass. I had a moment of clarity then. I realized I couldn't keep pretending everything was okay. I had to face the truth, no matter how painful it was. I couldn't trust her anymore. Not with my money, not with my heart, not with my future. The betrayal had cut too deep. I knew I had to get out, to start over, even if it meant losing everything. Because staying with her, living in this lie, would only destroy what little sanity I had left. I decided to cut ties completely, to fight for my rights, and to rebuild from this chaos. I'm still in the thick of it now, trying to figure out the next steps. But one thing's clear. I learned a hard lesson about trust, betrayal, and the importance of paying attention to the signs. If you ever find yourself in a situation like this, be vigilant, gather your evidence, and don't let anyone gaslight you into silence. Because the truth always comes out, and the pain of betrayal is a price you shouldn't have to pay alone. After I got all my evidence together and hired a lawyer, I thought I was finally taking control of the situation. But honestly, I wasn't prepared for how fast everything started spiraling out of my hands. Lisa, my wife, she's a master manipulator. She's bitchy, smart, and knows exactly how to twist things to her advantage. She started playing the victim right away, claiming I was some kind of jealous psycho who was paranoid about her business trips and her friendship with Mark. She insisted she never cheated, that I was just insecure and controlling. She kept crying, acting like I'd accused her of murder or something. Meanwhile, she was out there spending our savings, $500,000, funding her affair with Mark. I found out she'd been funneling that money into some secret accounts, transferring our hard-earned cash without my knowledge. It made me furious, but also numb. How could she do this? How could she drain our life savings to keep her secret life going? I'd worked so hard for everything, and now I was watching her spend it on some guy she barely even cared about. It was sickening. I decided I had to confront her again, face to face, and get some answers. I told her I knew everything about the condo, the stolen money, the forged signatures. That's when she snapped. She started lying even more, saying she was only doing this because I'd been distant, that I'd been having an affair myself, that I was the one betraying her. I couldn't believe it. She was so good at spinning her stories, I almost believed her for a second. She insisted she loved me, that she needed to escape because I was so controlling, that she was just trying to find her happiness. I felt a mix of rage and sadness. How did we get here? I'd built this life, sacrificed so much, only to find out she'd been secretly screwing Mark and draining our savings. I kept asking myself if I could forgive her, if maybe she'd just made a terrible mistake. But deep down, I knew this wasn't just a mistake. It was a betrayal of everything we had. I was starting to realize that maybe I'd been blind for too long, ignoring the signs, trusting her when I shouldn't have. I also started digging into her phone and bank accounts more. I wanted to know everything, every lie, every secret. That's when I found out she'd been forging my signature on legal documents, trying to transfer our property into her name. I couldn't believe she'd go that far. She was willing to lie, cheat, and steal just to keep her affair hidden. That was the moment I decided I had to take legal action. I contacted my lawyer again and started preparing to sue her for the property she tried to steal, for the money she drained, and for the emotional damage she caused. The more I uncovered, the angrier I got. She'd been lying about everything: her trips, her meetings, her relationship with Mark. She even told me she was helping Mark with his business, but I found out she was actually using our money to fund her affair. The condo she kept sneaking off to wasn't just a getaway, it was her secret hideaway with Mark. I found pictures of her and Mark in bed, their messages planning their future together. It was like a punch in the gut every time I looked at it. One thing I couldn't wrap my head around was her relentless denial. She kept insisting she was innocent, that I was the one cheating or having an affair. She said I was paranoid, that I was just jealous, but I knew better. I had the evidence and I could see the truth in her eyes. She was lying, and she was willing to destroy everything to keep her secret. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and furious all at once. I remember sitting in my office one afternoon, staring at the documents I'd collected. I felt like I was at the edge of a breakdown. Everything I'd worked for, our house, our savings, my reputation, was on the line. I realized I had to fight back hard. I couldn't let her get away with this. I was determined to prove her guilt in court, to get back what she stole, and to expose her for the liar she was. I also knew I had to protect myself emotionally. This betrayal cut so deep that I was questioning whether I'd ever trust anyone again. The worst part was that she kept up her lies, trying to manipulate everyone around her. She told her friends I was abusive, controlling, jealous, anything to make me look bad. She even told her family I was the one cheating, just to turn them against me. It was a brutal game of deception, and I felt like I was losing my mind trying to keep up with her lies. But I refused to back down. I'd fight her, legally and personally, to make sure she paid for what she'd done. Looking back, I realized I was naive to think I could save this marriage. The trust was gone, shattered by her lies and betrayal. Still, I couldn't help but feel a strange sense of relief that I finally knew the truth. For so long, I'd been blind, hoping things would get better, but now I saw her for what she really was: a manipulative, selfish woman who'd do anything for her own happiness, even if it meant destroying me. I've learned that sometimes you have to hit rock bottom before you can start rebuilding. And honestly, I don't know what's worse: losing everything I built or realizing I was living a lie all along. But I do know one thing: I'm done trusting her. From now on, I'm doing whatever it takes to protect myself and make her pay for the damage she caused. After I finalized my plans with the lawyer and started collecting everything I needed for the court case, Lisa's behavior only got more aggressive. She was trying to spin everything in her favor, playing the victim at every turn. She'd cry, scream, and call me names, anything to distract from the fact that she was the one who betrayed me, drained our savings, and forged my signature. She insisted she didn't do anything wrong, that I was just a controlling husband who couldn't handle her success or independence. One day, she showed up at my office unannounced, trying to manipulate me face to face. Her bitchy attitude was on full display, and she threw a tantrum when I told her to leave. She started accusing me of cheating, saying I was the one having an affair with some woman from work. That was her go-to lie now: project her sins onto me. I was so sick of her lies that I just sat there staring at her, feeling my blood boil. I knew her game and I wasn't falling for it anymore. That encounter was a turning point. I realized I couldn't trust her, not even a little. I started documenting every interaction, every lie, every attempt she made to manipulate the situation. Meanwhile, I kept pushing forward with my legal case. I wanted to sue her for the property she forged my signature on, for the money she drained, and for the emotional damage she inflicted. I was determined to hold her accountable, even if it meant going to court and risking everything I'd worked so hard for. In the meantime, I discovered even more disturbing details. She'd been secretly talking to Mark about how to hide their affair, how to make it look like everything was above board. She'd also been trying to convince her friends and family that I was the bad guy, that I was abusive or unfaithful. It was all part of her desperate attempt to save herself from the consequences of her actions. I felt disgusted at how far she was willing to go. One evening, I found her in our bedroom, packing her bags. She told me she was leaving because I was controlling. that she needed her freedom. I looked at her and saw how hollow her words were. She was trying to run away from the truth, but I knew I had enough evidence to ruin her if I wanted. I told her to leave, but she refused, claiming she'd fight me in court and take everything I had. That's when I realized she was willing to go to any lengths to keep her secret life hidden. I decided to escalate things legally. I filed the paperwork to freeze her accounts, to seize the property she'd forged my signature on, and to ensure she couldn't transfer assets without my approval. I also hired a private investigator to gather more evidence of her affair and her financial misdeeds. I was determined to expose her, not just for my sake, but to prevent her from hurting anyone else in the future. The emotional toll was heavy. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and angry, so angry I couldn't see straight some days. My trust was shattered, and I wondered if I'd ever be able to trust anyone again. Every time I saw her face, I was reminded of the lies, the betrayal, and the life I thought we had. I kept asking myself how I missed all the signs, how I let her manipulate me for so long. But deep down, I knew I had to focus on my future now. I had to protect what was left, fight for what was rightfully mine, and start healing from this nightmare. Meanwhile, Lisa kept pushing her narrative. She told everyone I was the one cheating, that I was abusive, that I was trying to ruin her. She wanted sympathy, but I knew better. I had all the proof, texts, bank records, forged signatures, and I was ready to fight her in court. I also knew that she'd try to drag me through the mud, make me look like the bad guy so she could save herself. That was her pattern: lie, manipulate, and play the victim. But I was done playing her game. Looking back now, I realize I should have seen the signs earlier. Her secret trips, her secret accounts, her constant lying. But I was blinded by love, by the hope that things would get better. Now I see how dangerous that was. I learned that trust is a fragile thing, and once it's broken, it's almost impossible to fix. I also learned that sometimes, the only way to protect yourself is to fight back hard, to expose the truth, and to refuse to be the victim of someone's selfishness and lies. This whole experience has changed me, maybe forever. I know I'll never fully trust her again, and I don't want to. I want to rebuild my life free from her deception. And honestly, that's the only way I see forward now. I have to focus on my future, on healing, and on making sure she doesn't get away with destroying everything I worked for. Because if I don't stand up now, I'll never be able to look myself in the mirror again without feeling the weight of her betrayal sitting on my shoulders. The legal process dragged on longer than I expected, and every day felt like an emotional. Lisa, true to form, kept up her act, crying, protesting, claiming she was the victim. She hired her own lawyer, and suddenly the courtroom became the where her manipulations would either be exposed or hidden behind a wall of lies. I knew she was trying to spin the story that I was the controlling, jealous husband who was trying to ruin her life, but I had concrete evidence to counter that. The forged signatures, the bank transfers, the explicit messages between her and Mark, all of it was damning. I remember the day I finally filed the lawsuit against her for the property she forged my signature on. It felt like lifting a heavy weight off my chest, even though I knew the fight wasn't over. I also demanded the return of the stolen money, and I pushed for full custody of the house. I wanted to strip her of her false claims and make her face the consequences of her actions. The court date was set, and I prepared myself mentally for what I knew would be a brutal fight. Lisa, meanwhile, doubled down on her lies. She accused me of all sorts of things, saying I was the one cheating, that I'd been unfaithful, that I'd been controlling her because I didn't trust her. She even went as far as to claim I'd been abusive, which was absurd. I knew she was just grasping at straws, trying to save her reputation and her freedom, but I wasn't having any of it. I had the evidence, and I was ready to expose her in court. During this time, I also hired a private investigator to dig deeper into her financials and her relationship with Mark. What I uncovered was even more disturbing. She'd been secretly meeting Mark in their condo, having sex and planning their future together. She lied about everything: her trips, her meetings, her feelings. The investigator found texts where she was talking about leaving me, starting a new life with Mark, and even trying to hide their relationship from her friends and family. That was the final nail. She was not just cheating. She was actively trying to abandon everything we built. It was a bitter pill to swallow. I kept asking myself how I'd missed all this, how I'd been so blind. But now I saw the truth clearly. She'd been manipulating me from the beginning. She played the perfect wife, the supportive partner, but underneath, she was scheming and lying every step of the way. The betrayal was so deep that I felt like I was losing a piece of myself with every new revelation. The court proceedings were intense. Lisa's lawyer tried to paint me as the controlling, jealous husband, trying to make me look like the bad guy. But I had the evidence to prove her lies. The forged documents, the bank records, the explicit messages, they all told a different story. I stood my ground, gave my testimony, and presented everything I had collected. It was a long, exhausting process, but I knew I had to see it through. I couldn't let her get away with stealing my property and draining our savings. One of the most upsetting moments was when Lisa tried to claim that I was the one who forged her signature, that I was trying to frame her. She spun this elaborate lie, crying and begging the judge to believe her. I felt rage boiling inside me. I knew the truth, and I had the proof. I looked at her and realized how far gone she was, willing to lie, cheat, and manipulate just to save herself. I couldn't help but think about how much I'd trusted her, how I'd believed in us, and how she'd turned that trust into a weapon against me. Throughout this ordeal, I also faced the emotional fallout. I was angry, devastated, and betrayed. I'd poured so much into our marriage, into our future, only to find out she'd been secretly screwing Mark and draining our savings. Every night I'd lie awake questioning everything, my judgment, my worth, whether I'd ever truly known her at all. It was a lonely, painful process, but I knew I had to stay strong. I had to fight for justice, for my rights, and for my sanity. In the end, I learned some hard truths about trust and betrayal. People are capable of hiding so much beneath a veneer of normalcy. I realized I'd been naive to ignore the signs, to dismiss my gut feelings. But I also learned that once you uncover the truth, you have a choice. You can either let it destroy you or use it as a catalyst to rebuild. I chose the latter. I decided I'd fight to get my property back, to hold her accountable, and to rebuild my life from the ashes of her lies. Because if I didn't stand up now, I'd forever carry the weight of her betrayal, and I refused to let her win. Now, I focus on healing, on moving forward, and on making sure she doesn't get away with destroying everything I worked so hard for. I've learned that sometimes the only way to reclaim your life is through confrontation and truth. And no matter how much it hurts, you have to face it head on. That's what I plan to do, no matter what it takes. The court date finally arrived after months of legal battles, and I felt a strange mix of relief and dread. I sat in that courtroom, staring across at Lisa, who looked more bitchy and manipulative than ever. She was trying to put on her innocent victim face, but I saw right through her. I had all the evidence, her forged signatures, the bank transfers, the explicit messages, laid out before the judge. I knew this was the moment where everything would either be exposed or buried under her lies. When my turn came to speak, I laid everything out clearly and concisely. I told the court how she had drained our savings, $500,000, funding her affair with Mark at their secret condo. I explained how she forged my signature on legal documents, trying to steal our property. I presented the text messages, the bank receipts, and the testimony from the private investigator. Each piece of evidence painted a damning picture of her deception and greed. Lisa's lawyer tried to spin her lies, claiming I was the one at fault, that I'd been controlling, jealous, and unfaithful. But the judge saw through her bullshit. The evidence was overwhelming. The forged signatures, the financial records, the explicit exchanges, they all proved she had lied, cheated, and stolen from me. The judge ruled in my favor, ordering her to return the property she forged my signature on and to pay back the stolen money. It was a hard-won victory, but I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. In the aftermath, Lisa was furious. She refused to accept the court's ruling and immediately filed an appeal, trying to drag things out even longer. But I knew I'd done everything I could. I'd fought for my rights, for my dignity, and for the future I deserved. I started the process of rebuilding my life, focusing on healing from the betrayal and betrayal's aftermath. I sold the house, cut ties with her completely, and began working on myself, therapy, new hobbies, and reconnecting with friends I'd pushed aside during the chaos. Looking back, I realize how much I've learned. Trust is fragile, and betrayal can come from the most unexpected places. I learned to listen to my gut, to pay attention to the warning signs, and to never ignore my instincts again. I also learned that sometimes, the only way to truly move on is to confront the pain head-on, no matter how ugly or painful it is. I've come to accept that I can't control others, only myself, and that sometimes the best revenge is simply reclaiming your life and dignity. Now I'm focused on rebuilding what I lost, financially, emotionally, and mentally. I've started saving again, investing in myself and learning to trust again, but with much more caution. I don't hate Lisa. I feel sorry for her, really. She's the one who threw everything away for a fleeting affair, for greed and lies. I hope she finds some kind of peace, but I know I won't be part of her world anymore. I've moved on, stronger and wiser, and I refuse to let her betrayal define me. If there's one thing I want anyone reading this to take away, it's this: trust is earned and betrayal cuts deep. But you can survive it. You can fight back. You can rebuild. Don't let anyone steal your happiness or your future. Stand your ground, gather your evidence, and never be afraid to expose the truth. Because at the end of the day, the only person responsible for your happiness is you. And I choose to move forward, battered but unbroken.